Hello, hello, and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I'm your host, Jay Glurt, and on Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, what do we do? Well, we look at the Deep Blue Sea franchise one chapter at a time. We've done all of that. My regular co-host, Mark, is on paternity leave, and so I'm looking at some Deep Blue Sea adjacent films that I'm less familiar with during this education period of the podcast. So we're looking at shark films, films that take place largely underwater, subterranean creatures of some kind, and films directed by Rennie Harlin, which is what we're doing today. We've done Cliffhanger, we've done Cutthroat Island, Mindhunters, 12 Rounds. But today we're looking at the most difficult film to find for me so far in this little endeavour, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. What is The Adventures of Ford Fairlane? I had no idea. It was, as I say, directed by Rennie Harlin, came out in 1990. This is an action comedy mystery starring Andrew Dice Clay as Ford Fairlane, the rock and roll detective. I don't. It's as delightful as that sounds. Also features Wayne Newton, Priscilla Presley, Lauren Holly, Brandon Cool, Maddie Corman, David Patrick Kelly, Morris Day, Robert Englund, Ed O'Neill, Gilbert Gottfried, a host of recognisable early 90s talent that I'm sure we're going to get into. But I need somebody who is more familiar with this film to help guide me through this experience. So returning, I think he last joined us on season 1 of the show when we looked for the first film, for Deep Blue Sea. From Simplistic Reviews is Matthew Stewart. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Little Miss Muffets and an Duffets. Oh!
So, I'm glad you started there, because before we even get into the film, Andrew Dice Clay is somebody that I only know from his supporting roles in Blue Valentine and A Star Is Born. I don't know.
Blue Jasmine.
Yeah, Blue Jasmine, sorry, Blue Valentine, different film. From Blue Jasmine, yes, thank you.
Way more bleak.
Yes. Well, depends how you look at it, I suppose. But so he's not somebody that I know of as being a comedian. He's a supportive actor. But that is not what he's most famous for. So can you enlighten myself, the listeners, who might be less familiar with the Dice Man?
The Dice Man cometh. Andrew Dice Clay is, like we talked about just a few seconds ago, he's something that's, to me personally, like, only in America do you have, like, well, I guess you have equivalencies, like Andy Gervais maybe, or something like that. Just maybe the closest one I can think of is, like, somebody in that same realm who's sort of raunchy, deadpan.
Oh, Ricky Gervais.
Also, Ricky Gervais. Sorry, I'm correcting you. You're correcting me. Who did I say? Randy Gervais?
Andy Gervais. I think.
And Andy Gervais. I guess I was thinking of Andy Serkis or something like that. I had the Batman on my mind, I guess. But he, stand-up comedian, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. He's the guy who was famously banned from MTV because he was basically making dick jokes and vagina jokes and everything on MTV. And they said no, and it was on I believe it was on the MTV Music Awards, like way early in that series' inception. Raunchy, he's always got the cigarette in his hand. He always dresses kind of like Elvis, I guess you can say. He's like the Elvis of stand-up comedy.
Kind of across between Elvis and Danny Zuko.
Yeah, I would say, basically, the hair of Danny Zuko with the dress of Elvis. But I guess that's kind of that intermingle sometimes. Yeah. Always with the cigarette, always with the, hey, I get, always like very Brooklyn. From Brooklyn. Yeah, but he's one of these guys who's, sold out Madison Square Garden several times. Like, he was the Chris Rock before Chris Rock and the Kevin Hart before Kevin Hart, and like all these other. He's like the proto working man stand-up comedian. And if you listen to the Simplistic Reviews podcast, which you probably don't because this is a family-friendly podcast.
Well, we've had DJ on in the past as well, so I would hope we had some crossover. DJ came on for Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger, another excellent Rennie Harlin addition. We couldn't be talking about two different movies, of course, here, which I find to be a lot of fun. But this is a movie that I always go back to probably several times a year because it is zany, it's off the wall, and Andrew Dice Clay is the star, and he's, for me, hilarious. But he's one of these comedians that you wouldn't really be able to have working these days doing his bit because everybody would get upset about this guy. This guy was the most controversial comedian ever. And if you ever watch some of his stand-up too, the crowd likes to go at him sometimes, and he is just spitting like venom at them if like they interrupt him during like he'll go after everybody that they personally love and everything. And it's he's a comedian from a bygone era, and then he transitioned into supporting roles like in Blue Jasmine and his show Dice on Showtime, showing him as like an older comedian, and also if anybody ever watched Entourage, he was on Entourage for a little bit as well too. So excellent comedian from an era that doesn't exist anymore, sadly enough.
So was his performance more of a persona that he was taking on this, like the things he said he didn't necessarily mean, the things that he said Andrew Clay didn't mean, but Dice did? That's
the thing that was always interesting about Andrew Dice Clay, where it's hard to sometimes separate the act from the human being sometimes, but it seemed like he was in wrestling parlance, kayfabe all the time. He was the Dice Man almost all the time. But I'm sure, you watch him in interviews and everything on Howard Stern or any other place where he's done interviews, and he still plays the Dice character. He's playing this raunchy, over the top, doesn't give a crap type of Brooklyn guy type thing. So okay. It's been always that kind of what's real, what's not with him. And then basically this movie came out and at the height of his career, this was also after he got canceled by MTV, where this is just basically, do you want to watch Andrew Dice Clay do his comedy act for an hour and a half, but also be in a movie with other musicians and actors? Well, here you go. This is what you're going to get. And this movie is perfectly 90s, along with so many other great movies from 1990 as well too.
Okay, because we have in the UK a comedian called Al Murray, who was big when I was younger, who had a persona of the pub landlord, and which is very much a character where if it's British, if it's English, it's a good thing. Anything else, it's not a good thing, and if it is a good thing, it means it's actually English. And so that was the kind of comedy that he would push, but it was very apparent that it was a character, but I think he had a lot of fans who thought, no, this guy's speaking the truth. This is how it's meant to be. We shouldn't be part of this Europe.
So he was like basically like pre-Brexit type guy.
Exactly. Yeah. This is 15, 20 years before Brexit was like even brought up. So
yeah.
So
Dice
I don't think it
as
helped.
Extreme as that. He was just more like he would just be talking like he was basically the crude. Instead of the pub landlord, he was the scummy guy who runs a strip club type thing.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the strip club owner, if you will, as opposed to the pub owner, if you will.
I see that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the Adventures of Ford Fairlane is the topic of discussion. You mentioned that you go back to this a couple of times a year already. Is that why you picked it from Rennie Harlin's filmography to talk about today?
A little bit. I mean, out of all, what else would I talk about with Rennie Harlin's filmography? I guess where else would I go with it besides probably this and Cliffhanger, and I guess Die Hard 2. You can go there as well, even though that's one of my least favorite Die Hards. It
came out the same year.
It did.
They were in the box office at the same time.
Dude, Rennie Harlin was like at the height of his powers. Like 1990 was like they were just throwing money at him because after he did, I think it was Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. I want to say 3 or 4. He directed Part 4, which is my personal favorite. It's Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah. It's amazing. It has great effects and it's over the top, just like this. I think Rennie Harlin just has his finger on the pulse of going kind of weird, and Rennie Harlin is what, Dutch?
He's Finnish.
Finnish. Okay, so somewhere from the finger countries type thing like that. That whole area, the Scandinavian area. So he's got crazy ideas. Kind of like he's like a poor man's Paul Verhoeven. How about that?
They're very different directors, but they're both from a similar place. Yeah, but he has such a bonkers career. Because the same year he made this, he made Die Hard 2, and he made Nightmare on Elm Street 4 2 years prior to that, and before that was a lot of films we haven't got to yet in this saga, like Prison and Arctic Heat, which I think are lesser known films. And then he goes from this to Cliffhanger, and then to Cutthroat Island. This film didn't do well. This film barely made its budget back, not allowing for marketing. Cliffhanger, much better. Cutthroat Island, one of the biggest bombs in the history of cinema.
Yeah, ups and downs, like everybody's career, it's ups and downs, and I think this being a Dice vehicle, there was such a rabid Dice fan, but I guess nobody wanted to go out and maybe see a movie with Dice. They wanted to see him on, a comedy stage or something like that. Which I don't know. This is a movie that I think goes with revisionist history, I feel like it always gets better, even though it's ridiculous and insane. But you compare it to some other movies that have come out since then, in the past 31 years, God, 32 years at this point. It I don't find a lot of things wrong with this movie in terms of my enjoyment of it, but I also think is a victim of not being a movie that did well and has just continued to like ride that like, oh, this movie sucks. Like this movie does not suck. We'll get into this, but that's my opinion. So take it away. I want to see where you go with this.
I agree. I enjoyed this a great deal, but I do understand why it has kind of faded into being almost a forgotten film at this point. Because like the plot as much that it is revolves around 3 missing CDs.
Yeah.
Which so it's very dated technology now. It's like, but at the time it would have been like it's some kind of secret website on them, I think, or some bizarre code place together. It might have been like high tech in 1990.
And somebody with 3 discs, like a 3-disc driver on their computer and everything. When you look at something like that, it's like whoa, and then they're data discs, and then when they interwork together, you can go to some website that's for I forgot what Wayne Newton.
It was a fake. It was Fred's Condom Factory.
Yeah, Fred's Condom Factory in South Africa.
But it's about counterfeiting pirate discs for a music company and making more money on it.
Yeah. Something ridiculous that it's like this doesn't make any sense, but I guess it does, maybe. Potentially makes sense.
Well, normally on the show we would try and go through the plot. That's not going to happen for this one because there is quite a lot of plot to get through, and I don't fully understand everywhere that it went. So we're going to talk about more of the film as a general.
I mean, I think you could probably do like a 5-minute plot synopsis, basically. Or if you want me to try and do it.
I mean, we can try. So Ford Fairlane is a rock and roll detective, and he's given the task of he gets a call from Johnny Crunch. Who's Gilbert Gottfried. Wonderful. Not in it enough. Dies too soon.
Also the same year he did Problem Child as well too.
Yeah, and not.
This was Gilbert Gottfried's year.
Yeah, it wasn't long before he did Aladdin. So
yeah, that too.
This is peak Gottfried.
Peak Gottfried.
It's 2 years before Iago. So he's a shock jock radio DJ who went to school or was in a band with Ford Fairlane, and he asked him to find this groupie called Zuzu Petals.
His daughter, his wife, and his daughter.
A nice Chinatown reference.
Whoever she is, yeah.
There's a lot of like film noir and detective nods throughout that I appreciated. Like he does some Jimmy Cagney impressions along the way and stuff. So he gets asked by Johnny Crunch to find this girl. He also gets asked by Priscilla Presley as Colleen Sutton to find her, saying that that Zuzu is Colleen's sister. There's a kid that Ford Fairlane knows on the beach who wants him to find his dad, and then there's like a fourth thing that he's trying to figure out as well.
He's got
the lead singer of the band, the Black Plague, is like an 80s hair metal band.
Yeah, Johnny Black. Vince Neil plays Johnny Black from Motley Crue. Yes.
So he dies on stage, and numerous people want Ford Fairlane to look into that because he's a rock and roll detective. So all of these things are, of course, connected, and they kind of centre around Wayne Newton as Julian Grendel, a record exec, who is behind some murders. And there's these 3 CDs dotted around the place that will put together, reveal what's going on. Is the bare bones of the plot, I think.
Yeah. And they're trying to find again a Martin Mooney as well too. So
who's Art Mooney? Art Mooney,
yeah,
who is a real guy.
He
has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, inside of which is a CD. Apparently.
The aha moment.
This is a very silly film.
It is. It's ridiculous in its plot because it's just layer upon layer, and it's red herring upon red herring, and MacGuffin upon MacGuffin.
But I think it's very interesting that this is a dice vehicle. No pun intended with vehicle and Ford Fairlane. Because again, his name is Ford Fairlane, and he drives a Ford Fairlane.
Yes.
Fine. And everywhere he goes, everyone knows who he is, and they have his signature drink of a Sambuca milkshake.